Hi, welcome to our webinar today. I'm absolutely excited to have everyone here. We are just having a little bit of technical difficulties with getting Isabel in right now to speak with me. So once we have that figured out, we should be up, and I see her right now. Okay, perfect. All right, welcome, Isabel. Thanks so much for joining us. Sorry about the delay there. We did a few of these and had perfect records. Um, so absolutely elated to have you and have everything working now perfectly well. So we're here today to talk about just a compelling topic in so many different ways. Right person, right seat, right time. We hear about that so much it almost kind of loses its meaning because we hear about those right elements so much. And it's kind of a special time to talk about that because there's so much change that we're experiencing with technology, with shifts in society in so many different directions in business that we're at a really unique precipice. And of course, artificial intelligence is everywhere. And just to kick us off and thinking about this, there's been a lot of notable rollbacks in technology systems, guided, of course, by AI, whether we're talking about, I think Ford brought back a bunch of people recently, over 1,000 for quality checks. Starbucks rolled back its like quality inventory program. Taco Bell just rolled back or stopped its AI drive-through. So there's no shortage of the importance of having a human in the loop, and also people are craving connecting experiences. And I'm so excited to have you today, Isabel, because you're part of EOS Worldwide and you're focused on hospitality, which we focus a lot on hospitality as well. So with that, I'd love to just kick this over to you, and you can just like tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of how we landed on this topic together.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about something I'm super passionate about, which is EOS and hospitality. So 25-year career in hospitality, in operations and human resources. In 2023, I transitioned to be an EOS implementer. So implementing the entrepreneurial operating system in entrepreneurial businesses and actually larger businesses as well. I have several hospitality clients, so I'm still very tied to hospitality. I think we've seen the news, we know what's happening, we know the importance of the human in the loop, but I think the more AI we get, the more craving for humanity we will have. I think there's this basic human need to feel seen, right? To be taken care of. And I'm not sure AI will be able to do that, at least not yet. And people just crave experiences, right? We want experiences. We got to find efficiencies where they are, but people really want experiences. And I see it myself. I'm sure you've experienced it. I could be dealing with an agent or an AI bot, and then I'm just like, agent, like get me a person. Because we crave that. There's something about that we still really miss and need.
Yes, yes. It's that question of how do we provide the structure that we need to in a business to consistently execute the ability to deliver that extraordinary experience where we feel seen and cared for and heard, with the flexibility that's necessary and the humanness that's necessary to do
Yeah.
that. So we're really going to be talking about having the right people in the right positions at the right time to be able to do that. So I'd love to know more from your experience. How do you strike that balance between having structure? Are there any like practical stories or strategies that you use to try to have that structure that allows people to execute those experiences?
Sure. So I'll talk about two things. The first one is the Isadore Sharp, founder of Four Seasons and chairman of Four Seasons Hotels that I work with for 12 years. His quote, "Systemize the predictable so we can humanize the exceptional," is so relevant today, right? So we want to systemize whatever is predictable and repetitive and find those opportunities in the client journey, in the employee journey, where we can touch those people with a humanity or service or hospitality. So that's one thing. On the EOS side, how we define who's right people. Everybody talks about right people, A players. What is that? How do we define that? And I really love the EOS definition because it's very simple. And we talk about this Jim Collins concept of right person in the right seat, right? Put the right people
Hmm.
on the bus. So a right person is a person that shares our core values. And you know all about core values. This is your bread and butter, right? Jennifer, you know the importance of that. So somebody that is really aligned with our core values. And then what does being in the right seat mean for us
Hmm.
is they get it, they want it, and they have capacity for the seat. We call that GWC. So they have to get it. That's that innate, ability to just understand the ins and outs of a position. They have to want it, right? They have to have that motivation, their heart to do it. And then the capacity is kind of the pulse.
Yeah.
Are they able to really, execute the position to the level that you need them to execute? So, right person shares your core values, right seat, they get it, want to have capacity.
They have the capabilities, the ability to execute the core job requirements. So whether that's the ability to reason and think through things,
That's right.
learn, uh, understand the steps of service, but then also that heart and that values that and connection to the vision.
For
Absolutely.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And core values, know again what you do. We really believe in hiring, firing, reviewing, rewarding, and recognizing people based on core values. So
Hmm.
living and dying by those core values, right, is
Hmm.
critical.
How do you bring that forward in the interview process? Really, like the heart of the hiring process. We do a lot with assessments, and I know we could talk a lot about that. But the interview
Yeah,
is really where you get to see the candidate and where you can really bring in the team.
for
Um,
sure.
what are some of your best practices when you work with organizations
Yeah.
on hiring?
So yes, assessments are a big part of that, and you do this
Hmm.
really well. So whatever assessment you use, you want to have some insight into the applicant, right?
Hmm.
And then once the person is in front of you, behavioral based interview questions based on
Hmm.
your core values, right? And always validate and go against, right? So
Yeah.
some companies have core values that are, a little bit generic, like integrity. We know that. We like to, let's say, a better core value description would be do what you say, for example. So tell me about a time then you were not able to do what you said you were going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of against the counter core value, and then ask the person, okay, tell me about a time where you fulfill your commitment or your promise you had made to someone. So I
Right.
think really doing those two things is super helpful. I'll give you a fun example. I wouldn't say a fun example, a challenging example. Um, when I was working in luxury hotels, we had a general manager who would very sneaky do this. They would put a piece of paper on the floor and go to the
Mm.
security office and watch how many people walk by that piece of paper and didn't pick it up.
I have heard that trick from working with clients. I've heard that quite a
Yeah,
few times of seeing
yeah,
something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Or even just asking candidates when they get to the place of the interview, like what surprised you or what did you notice while you were walking through? Here's a great way to see just what they observe, their connection to the experience, and kind of kick off those conversations.
for
You,
sure.
you
Two more
mentioned,
yeah,
no,
sorry,
go ahead.
two more examples on that. Housekeeping, for example, our room attendants, this is a
Mhm.
very high-paced, essential role in hospitality. I had room attendants, that they were being interviewed, the director of housekeeping would take them to a room and say, tell me what you see.
Mm.
And would also see, is the person keeping up with the pace, right? Because this is a high-paced job. I have a client, it's a car wash, pretty large business, and the owner, after the interviews, would walk the applicants to their car and see if their cars were clean. So a little cringy, but are you walking the talk, right? Are you
Yeah.
just talking a good game when you're interviewing? Is that who you really are? We want to find who you really are.
Hmm. Right. That authenticity. Everything starts with that openness and staying true to our values. You mentioned validating the interviews. I wanted to touch on that. That's a piece that people can often overlook if we don't have a set way of both having set questions, even if there's a question bank and there's some degree of freedom, but we're asking kind of the same values, same competencies, but ways of evaluating what we're hearing. If we don't have that in place, then it can be so hard to know how the interview is working and be able to look at that over time.
Yes, I think you need that structure, and with the risk of being a little controversial, I just got the field guide from Unreasonable Hospitality, right, which is
Hmm.
the follow up to Unreasonable Hospitality, the book from Will Guidara, and he says multiple times, hire the person, not the resume, hire the person, not the resume, which is goes a little bit against everything we always preach, which is same questions so you can compare different applicants. But it's a fine line. We want to be able to do both. We want to try to really get to know the essence of this person while really measuring against core values and core competencies for the position.
Hmm. So we've talked about the process of identifying that right person to hopefully put them in the right seat. And you brought up beautiful transition, unreasonable hospitality, which is really all about giving people more than what they expect. So first of all, I'd love to know some of your examples of organizations you work for that really put this into practice.
Yeah, so being unreasonable in terms of hospitality, and it applies to any industry, by the way, right? This is not just for hotels or restaurants or, even airlines or cruises. Like a doctor's office can practice unreasonable hospitality.
Hmm.
A manufacturing company can, have this as part of their culture. So it's really three things: is being present, right? That's the first one. The second one is taking what we do seriously without taking ourselves too seriously.
Hmm.
And this is this concept of earned informality, which is a very interesting concept. And then, yeah, we can go back to that. And then the third one is one size fits one, right? So every client, every customer is different. And I really think, Jennifer, this can extend to so many parts of business and of our lives, right? Because just like when we have core values, some of my clients are like, we hire employees based on these core values, but we also use these core values to engage with vendors or to engage with the community, right? And who do we work with? I have a client that works, they manage Airbnbs. So their client is not really the person that's staying in the Airbnb, it's the owner of the
Hmm.
property. And they only want to work with owners that are aligned with their core values. So it's an interesting perspective.
Yes, we have some organizations that will share their vision and values and their promises to their partners and be very open about that once they've created that piece with us, which
Yes.
is a wonderful way to bridge those connections.
Yeah, it shows kind of consistency and alignment.
Hmm.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So if we're talking about, let's go back to that right person. How do you hire for that unreasonable hospitality? Have you had organizations where I know unreasonable hospitality is crazy popular right now, where they say,
Yeah.
I'd love to take this approach and really embed it in my hiring process.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'll refer to Danny Meyer, who
Mhm.
is the person that wrote Setting the Table 20 years ago, actually. And he talks about the hospitality quotient, right? So he talks about the person that you hire has to have 51% of that.
Right.
So 49% skills, but a little bit over this, the threshold of people that just display certain attributes, right? That are born
Mhm.
this way. And I think what's really interesting when he talks about that, and I have them written down because I want to make sure I get them right. Are you bringing people on the team that has what he calls optimistic kindness, right?
Mm.
And if you're in hospitality, it's hard work, right? So if you
Right.
want somebody that will really be able to shine, they have to have that. They have to have a curious intelligence. He talks about people that can really listen, and be truly fascinated by what the other person has to say. He talks about work ethic. We know this is in hospitality is just critical. You're working weekends, you're working holidays.
Hmm.
He talks about empathy. He talks about self-awareness, and he talks about integrity in the sense of having that judgment to do the right thing when things are hard.
Hmm.
So 51% of this stuff, right, is what really will get you a great hospitality hire. And then 49% is the skills, which we can train for, which we can
Hmm.
train for.
Yeah. And where do most organizations struggle with that unreasonable hospitality piece when we're talking
I
about
think,
right person, right seat,
yeah.
right time?
Yeah, it's hard. I think we are now there's desperate hires. The market is hard. It's hard to find great
Hmm.
talent out there. So a warm body becomes a warm body, right? And then mistake number one, desperate hires. We know the team has to pick up the slack, so we don't want to lose more people. But then what happens is you have to train them, you have to onboard them, and A players don't like to work with B players, right?
Hmm.
If I'm a 10, I don't like to work with an 8. So when you bring somebody and you are not deliberate about who you're bringing to your team, how's this person going to fit, right?
Hmm.
In the puzzle. And I like that analogy of a puzzle because that means everybody's different, every piece is different,
Right.
but we fit well together.
We complete that vision together.
We complete that vision together without being all the same cookie cutter. So, you
Hmm.
want to have balance on the team, right? If you have too many drivers or people that are, that avoid conflict or people that are just pleasers, you want to have the nice mix. So I
Hmm.
think we made the mistake of desperate hires. Then I think we throw them in the fire without training them. Or what's worse sometimes is they get trained by two different people. So they get confused, right? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, but I was, on the schedule with this person Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and now Thursday, Friday, I'm being trained by somebody else who's teaching me their own way of doing things.
Right. Or different leaders running the shift that contribute to different expectations, different ways of doing things. And then it's almost like you're working in two different businesses
Yeah, and it's
with different
confusing,
leadership.
and it's
Hmm.
confusing, right? And one of the things that EOS has really focused me on is the importance of clarity and simplicity. We have to keep it super simple, and when we confuse people, there's so much at stake, and the client
Hmm.
is going to feel that, right? The team's going to feel that, the client's going to feel that. So we have to be very, very mindful when we bring somebody onto the team.
Hmm. Yeah. What are some of the pitfalls that you see organizations run into in onboarding? Like clearly training with two different people, but just other things like what about delivering that unreasonable hospitality to the new hire through
Yeah.
the onboarding process? It seems like so many organizations trip up there.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful not to put them to operate on live patients right away.
Hmm.
So always shadowing somebody, build that confidence with that person, right?
Hmm.
Four Seasons and Mandarin Oriental, where I worked for, have a very robust designated trainer program, right?
Hmm.
So you have adults that know how to communicate with adults that are really good at what they do, and there's a process, right? You're attached to the hip for 2 weeks. There's a training checklist, right? There's
Hmm.
processes there. And I'm a big fan of a great book called The First 90 Days. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Yes, I love it.
It's a
I
great
read it when I took my first leadership role with Corvirtus. Yeah.
So, the importance of early wins,
Hmm.
right? And doing a 30, 60, 90 to make
Hmm.
sure where is this person on our core values? Where is this person on the get it wanted capacity for the seat,
Hmm.
right? Is the person onboarding at the right pace? So I think all that adds up. Feedback is so important in the beginning. I think you got to stay super, super close to a new hire.
Yeah.
It's so critical, so critical. And we sometimes just, throw them in the
Hmm.
fire.
Just curious, we talked about housekeeping earlier. How long in like a luxury brand is typically a new housekeeper working alongside someone?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, I would say an average of 2 weeks, and then with very close monitoring. I think it depends who you're hiring. I'm going to go back to are you hiring the person or the resume?
Hmm.
If somebody comes from a different brand, or so let's say you're a five-star hotel, if you hire somebody from a
Hmm.
three-star hotel, right? Um, those habits are going to be very hard to break.
Yeah.
It's almost like better to hire somebody that's never done the job sometimes because you're
Hmm.
you're starting from scratch. So habits are hard to break, and almost like retraining somebody it's harder than training,
Yes. Yeah.
if that
I've
makes
heard that
sense.
before with our work in hospitality that
Yeah.
getting people to move to that different way of doing things. And that's where the value is if you have someone that's super excited and eager to go and do this, then that makes so much of a difference.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say 2 weeks, but every person is different. The training
Hmm.
wheels can come off at different points and you let the person
Hmm.
fall. That's how we all learn to
Right.
ride bikes, right? And then just feedback, feedback. I just
Yeah.
believe in feedback, especially in the beginning, in the morning, like beginning of the day, end of the day, beginning of the end of the day, super close.
Hmm. Right. And having that validation process before they leave training too, to make sure
For
that
sure,
we're
for
ready
sure.
to have the training wheels off.
Yeah, and then so hire slow, fire fast, right?
Hmm.
We've all heard that. And I would say don't fire that fast in the sense let's make sure that we did everything in our part to set this person up for success,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about once we're through onboarding and we're in the job, uh, a challenge with high touch service. You mentioned it, just high workload, high demands, facing guests or clients or customers every day. What do you see organizations do when they maybe have a peak of turnover, like a 90-day churn, or if they're 6 months, whatever the case may be, where they might be struggling with burnout or some other factors? How do they go about tackling that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's why hospitality lost a lot of talent after the pandemic. Right? A
Hmm.
lot of people just went to do different things. Because it's hard. Like it's hard when you're in front of a customer or like think about, I live in Miami, right? So think about,
Hmm.
in the height of season, right? You're setting up 300 chairs on the beach, right? In the morning, if you're a beach
Hmm.
attendant, a pool attendant, then all day in the sun, right? It's hard. The work is hard. And then you don't have enough towels. Oh, no towels, right? So what's happened? I think you have to analyze the pain points. There's a couple of exercises that Will Guidara talks about, and the first one is this kind of the interrogation of the customer journey. So
Hmm.
if we map out, right, this is the customer journey, and I'm talking about 300 steps. I'm not talking about
Hmm.
five. I'm talking about every step, right? From the moment you get out of your car and you enter the lobby and you go to the bathroom and you wash your hands and like every step and doing this with the whole team and identifying, okay, here are the pain points and here are the opportunities, and really digging deep into that. Usually, going back to EOS, when we get to a
Hmm.
root cause of an issue of burnout or whatever the issue might
Hmm.
be, it's usually a people problem or a process problem
Right.
or both.
Hmm.
So is the process right, right? And you gotta take the time, otherwise you won't solve the issue to its root. So when there is a pain point, let's dig, 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 and understand
Hmm.
why this is happening. Speak to the people involved. One of my favorite quotes is, the people at the top have all the authority and the people at the bottom have all the information. And the people that are closest to the customer have all the information. Are we getting enough feedback from them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've done that too, where we've mapped out the guest or customer journey and then seen with the values perspective, where are we like doing a fantastic job living the values, where maybe are we falling short, and that can be so helpful. But
Yeah,
also thinking about the employee experience. So how is the guest journey intersecting with the employee or team member journey? Where are there stressful points that just aren't necessary or really show maybe that it's hurting both the guest and the employee, and that we can
sure.
go after fixing those. And then to your other point, you mentioned like being a 10 and not wanting to work with an 8. One of our founders talked about eagles don't like to go to turkey school. And if we have that hiring process nailed, we're doing great with recruitment, then we're bringing in those 10s, those eagles. And if it's not a great environment for them with the systems and the processes, what are easy wins that we can start getting
Yeah.
rid of and tackling, so that they have that process where they can really thrive and create those memorable moments for the guest.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an art, it's not a science,
It
right?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. And we can put all these processes and systems in place, but we're dealing with humans, right?
Yeah.
That have lives outside of work, and you never know, right, when somebody is having a bad day and how to handle that and how to marry
Mm-hmm.
those. And then, the five stakeholder, I love that you mentioned the employee journey or the team member journey, because it starts with the employee, right? If you take care of your employees, you take care of your guests. And then you talk about the community, and then you talk about your vendors, and then you talk about your investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
That virtual cycle, where we can hopefully keep succeeding and reinvesting in the business.
Yes, absolutely. Um, and you talked about taking care of the employees with some of our employee engagement surveys and things that we do, and organizations that want to see like I'm offering all these benefits, like how are they viewed, how are they perceived? We found that the employees that were most likely to want to stay within hospitality most appreciated things like a well-being program, anything around mental health, wellness, anything around that, physical fitness. They very much valued those programs more if they were, committed. Like, yes, I'm in it for the long haul. This is my career. So having those resources available to help balance out some of the demands of the work environment.
For sure. I think a robust employee assistance program is a non-negotiable these days,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, how are you supporting your employees when they're going through hard times, like legally, financially,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with,
Financial wellness is something I think we've
yes,
realized over the last 5 to 10 years is key to
huge,
tackle.
huge, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have, people with young kids, or you have people with aging parents. Like, are you taking care, right, with five generations in the workplace? The needs are
Mm-hmm.
completely different. Yeah, and sometimes you see these, kind of vanity benefits, right, which are really not helpful for the majority of the employees, and companies do it a little bit for show. And you have to be really, you got to take care of your employees. I always say there's two things, right? The food you give them in the cafeteria, if you're a hotel, or
Mm-hmm.
that's a very tangible benefit that you're telling people every day, I care about you and about what I feed you. The quality of your uniforms, the cleanliness of the locker rooms, right? All those
Mm-hmm.
things, you see those every day versus your paycheck, which you see every 2 weeks.
Right.
So the company is sending you a message, right? Very, very, very clearly, and every day, do I care or do I not care about these things for you?
Mm-hmm. It also gets to that psychological theory of hygiene factors versus motivators. If we don't have the hygiene
Yes,
factors, like the clean
for
locker
sure.
room, the meals, things like that,
Yes.
the resources we need in order to perform, then we're not going to be able to actualize on the motivators that we need to deliver hospitality.
That's right. That's right. How can you expect somebody, right, to
Right.
clean a $1,000 a night suite, right,
Mm-hmm.
when we can't keep the locker room? So I think people underestimate the power of that. I think people
Yeah.
really care. So it's
Yes.
an opportunity. I think it's low hanging fruit.
Yes. Low hanging fruit, easy wins. Those are always great to have and to
Yeah,
be
for
able
sure.
to act on right away.
For sure.
If we're talking about unreasonable hospitality and those moments that you'll remember and getting more than you expect, uh, we're really talking about protecting those human moments and having the right seats to be able to protect those moments and make them happen, create them. So, how do we know where the human interaction is most critical?
So we talked about those, we talked about human in the loop, and we talked about
Mm-hmm.
the kind of interrogation of the customer journey or the employee journey. I think the job that leaders need to do is identify how are we not helping our teams be present, right? What's getting in the way?
Mm-hmm.
And the intersection between technology and talent is a challenging one, right? Because a lot of technology, you have it in your hand. So
Mm-hmm.
where is that? Is the technology making our jobs easier or harder?
Right.
And then there's kind of the self-imposed standards, right? We talked about consistency, but so, check-in is done this way. And there's great examples of you check in at 10 p.m., you're exhausted. And there's a great example. It's like, no, no, if you come in after 10, we give you your room key, go rest, we'll see you tomorrow, right? We already
Mm-hmm.
have your credit card on file. So why are we making the guest work?
Mm-hmm.
I always ask
Yeah.
that question, right? Why are we making the guest work? And the same for employees, right? Why are we, if we know there's a recurring moment, and we identify that pattern, where we can support the team, I went back to the towels, right? We know that at 5 o'clock we run out of towels and people are coming to see the sunset, right? That's a recurring pattern. We have to fix that process. We have to get to the root cause and fix it. So I think we need to create opportunities for our employees to be present. So being mindful of technology, of stressors that we could fix, right? Make sure they have the resources. And it doesn't take money all the time. I think it's really important to clarify this, Jennifer, because people is like, oh, this is all easier to say, but you need a budget for this. And there's so many examples. I'll share one of a guest that maybe comes to the restaurant several nights in a row, and they end up ordering the same dish. Last night that they're dining there, they get the recipe written by the chef, right, with a note.
Right.
What's the cost of that, right? Or when somebody's checking in, you notice they're coughing or sneezing, you offer to send them a tea up to their room. What's the cost of that, right? Versus being present and feeling that, making sure that person's feeling seen. So I think that's an opportunity. We just have to remove the obstacles so people can be present.
Right. Or even asking the questions if someone looks like they're going through something, and acknowledging that and building that rapport as part of service.
For sure. And it's hard. This generation is not necessarily a generation that loves looking at people in the eye, or, the COVID generation, right?
Yeah.
That may struggle with that face-to-face interaction. So there's a lot of work to be done there on the training.
Yeah, I heard something interesting. It even linked it farther back to maybe the early 2000s, where we started to be able to get pizza online without having to call in the order. And so that indoctrinated my age group included, not having to do like a basic conversation for an order, when those systems started.
Interesting.
A couple decades or so ago now, that we're able to just engage in all these interactions without the human piece. And then when we get into a role where we're needing to execute that, it makes it so much harder.
And back to Will Guidara, we say, he says service is black and white and hospitality is color. And what makes it, right, colorful is the human touch.
Yes.
So where can we interject that?
And we're really talking about teaching people or guiding people to be able to make judgments. Do you have any guidelines for if someone's trying to create like something similar to that check-in experience or front desk experience where there's a lot of judgments that come into play? And we want that feeling to be consistent, and we want business operations and success to be consistent. How do we balance that?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. For us, they don't happen often, but for the team, they do happen often. Again, people checking in at 10 p.m., that's a common pain point. That's a pattern of a recurring moment that we can tackle. Waiting in line, right, at a pharmacy or anywhere, those are recurring moments that we can say, okay, how do we make it better? So I'll give you an example of the taking ourselves seriously without taking ourselves too seriously, right? We've had this in hotels when a child forgets their teddy bear or their pillow or their whatever, their blankie. You've seen the stories of this, and we find it, the guest has departed, but we take pictures of the teddy bear in the pool, in the spa, right? We send postcards with teddy bear. If you're getting that for the first time as the guest, you're like, wow, but this happens all the time. So why can't we find, okay, this is the process for this and do it authentically? But there's also, again, the people that are closest have all the information. Ritz-Carlton was known for giving people a $2,000 budget to solve any guest issue, right? Every employee was empowered to say, you have up to $2,000 to make the guest in front of you happy, because we know that the value of a guest is so much higher than that. So you have to train people and empower them and brainstorm and do role playing, right? And there's ways to prepare for this. So that then when something happens, the team is ready and able and trained.
what you said earlier, and we've all seen examples like the teddy bear on vacation on social media and things, and think, wow, that's an
Yeah,
extraordinary moment, but it happens all the time. It's being done all the time. We
yeah,
could almost mine those wins, those moments of exceptional hospitality, and have a process for doing that. And you could do this regardless if we're thinking outside of hospitality, like being in consulting or engineering or healthcare, even, which even connects more with hospitality, and see, okay, these are extraordinary moments. How could we replicate them? How could we give everyone that budget or just decision making or space that they need to be able to make this happen even more? And just
yeah.
doing an inventory of extraordinary moments could be
Yes,
so
I think
helpful.
again, yeah, going through the interrogating the customer journey and learning
Mm-hmm.
from mistakes, right? And Four
Right.
Seasons calls mistakes glitches, and we want to have glitches. We want to have opportunities because every mistake is an opportunity for us to learn how to not repeat this the same time, and then you have to systemize it, right?
Right.
And say when something like this happens. But then there's going to be one-offs, right? There's going to be situations when people really have to use their own judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you have to trust the people you have, right? You have to empower them and support them if they had the right intention, but they made a mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a balance. If you hire the right people, right, and you train them, and then you got to trust them. You have to trust them and learn from the mistakes when they happen. And when there's spontaneous moments, right? Like
Right.
the groom is getting ready for the wedding. 45 minutes before, he's looking for his shoes. He forgot his shoes. Is there an employee in the hotel that has the same size?
Right.
They're gonna get married with those shoes, right? You can't process that. You can't systemize that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are have that empathy chip that we talked about earlier, you're gonna say, how can we solve this? We're not gonna send them shopping. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
time. How can I solve this for someone? I'm gonna take my
Right.
shoes and
And the
move
readiness that that's what we do. We solve these problems,
agile.
take care of people. Yes, the agility. Yeah,
That's
the
right.
agility and flexibility. That's a piece that we look for in a lot of our
Yeah.
solutions, especially at the management level, but even at the front line, is just that flexibility, adaptability, and curiosity, because that's going to get you the person that's going to want to understand
For sure.
that guest that maybe seems like something's going on. How can I help them? How can I make things better?
Yes, because I think you can really mess it up as well. Like if somebody had an issue, right, or a problem during their stay and you send them a bottle of wine, like I've seen this happen. People come down with the bottle and say, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Why did you send this to my room?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? So have we taken the time to look at this person's profile and said, how can we make it right for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? What does right look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can make it worse if we don't handle it right, if it shows that we're just being, procedural or mechanical and not asking the right questions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Truly understanding that authentic person.
That's right. That's right. And letting them tell you what's going to make it
Yes.
better for them.
Right. Yes. That's often the best case.
Yeah.
So if we go back to people and the journey of them going from someone exploring an opportunity to join our team to being a part of the organization, what are some early signs that maybe something they might be in the wrong role or that systems aren't working well? How do you mentioned 30, 60, 90-day reviews. We've done those as well. What are some ways that you coach leaders to understand those situations?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go back to the kind of who's training this person and getting feedback from the trainee and the trainer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I do think that a manager, the cost of replacing a bad hire is so high, and the cost on the team and the effort on the team. I think the manager needs to be involved at least once a week to say, how's it going? Are we on
Mm-hmm.
track with our training schedule? And getting to know the person as a person. I think sometimes we just like, is the training going well? Yeah, how's it? But are we taking our time to build that trust from the beginning? Because otherwise, the person will never open up and tell us that something is wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just won't come back. We've all seen this. You get ghosted, and it's like, what happened? Oh, this was happening. Oh, and nobody knew,
Mm-hmm.
right? So back to the human in the loop, right? In the process, like who's building? For me, like you can't let a new employee eat alone in the cafeteria for the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's just who's having lunch with this person every day.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it seems simple,
Right.
but you're trying to bring this person into your culture. Bringing a great person is not enough if you have a bit of a challenging team. Another example that, a bit of a tangent here, but I think it's interesting to share. Wolgidara talks about when he was rebuilding a team, he would bring one great person in and the team would push the person out, right? Push them out.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he ended up doing is bringing three new people at once.
Hmm.
So that now there's a
They
bit of
have
a
a
posse
cohort.
there, right? There's a cohort, there's a posse there that will support
Mm-hmm.
each other, and their chances of surviving and little by little changing the culture is much more likely to succeed.
Right. And even being able to support one another on the fly, clarify things that maybe get missed, as well as build that relationship together and not feel like you're alone, that you're the new person, you're
That's
part of
right.
this group.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful for organizations that are able to time that to have a few people at once and have that cohort, in addition
that's
to
right.
all sorts of other efficiencies too.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's easier to train three people at once than one at a
Mm-hmm.
time, right?
Yeah.
That cohort concept you just talked about.
Excellent. Well, we're nearing the end, starting the end of our time together. If anyone has any questions or things before Isabel and I continue the conversation, feel free to put those in the chat. But as we continue our conversation, where do leaders maybe tend to go wrong when there's a performance challenge early on in tenure? Where do they often misdiagnose it or mess up?
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to the assessments and I'm gonna go back to the do they get it, do they want it, and do they have
Yeah.
capacity, right? So do they get it? They understand. If you put somebody that's not a salesperson in a sales role, they will struggle, right? If you put a person that is more task
Mm-hmm.
oriented than people oriented in a people oriented job, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not gonna be, using their superpowers, right, and using their energy right.
Yeah.
It's going to kind of drain their energy instead of feed their energy. So, are they in the right position? Do they get it? And the want is really the
Mm-hmm.
motivation, right? Why are they
Mm-hmm.
here? Get to know them as people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the capacity is the only one that I think it's a little bit tricky because as leaders, maybe we judge too quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's we gotta watch out for that, and ask a lot of questions. I think people love talking and not asking questions, and you gotta ask a lot of questions, right? How's it going? What's working? What's not? How can I support you? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're often frustrated at that point, and then we get defensive, and that leads us to kind of shut down and not ask the questions that we
Yeah.
need to.
I think we talk a lot about seniority. We don't talk enough about juniority as a concept.
Hmm.
Like your face, you're like, oh, tell
That's
me
really profound. I love that. Yeah.
more. And I've seen this because with several clients, when, okay, we have this person, but they're not ready, right? They're too junior for them to be in this leadership team, for example, or in this leadership role. And we tend to then put somebody more senior above them. I suggest we flip that. Let's flip
Yeah.
that over, and so have that person in the seat that you think they have the potential for, and
Mm-hmm.
have somebody under them or coaching them or mentoring them that could be internal, could be external, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're promoting somebody to a first-time CFO role, for example, right? They were a controller, you're like, can they be a CFO? Like get a mentor for them, right? To
Mm-hmm.
help with this juniority. And it's not like sink or swim with
Mm-hmm.
people that are junior. So I'd say flip it. Let's put somebody under there. Like, there's that movie called The Intern, I think with Robert De Niro, right? Where the
Yeah.
intern really gives you a lot of insight into the ins and outs of the job and the political aspect of a role that's hard to figure out when you're junior in a role. So I think we can challenge ourselves to say, okay, let's give that person a chance and let's put
Mm-hmm.
somebody coaching them, mentoring them that's been in that seat before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't often think of what support the person might need or what other things are out there, or not just, oh, this is the decision, and either it's they're going to make it happen or not, but really what do they need, and how can we be responsive as they grow and get into things to make sure that they're supported
That's
with
right.
all of that. Yeah.
And I would make that super clear to the person and the team and
Hmm.
say, we understand that we would like somebody here that's done this before, but we think this person has potential, and here's how we're
Hmm.
going to support them. And we expect everybody else to support them, right?
Right. And there might be bumps. We know there's going to be bumps along the way, right?
Of
Yeah.
course.
And we do coaching oftentimes with new leaders, and that's something too that can be so helpful, having that like external coach, and then having maybe a senior person that's in a different department that can give you that outside view, and then people that can coach upward, that what their perspectives are, like that
For
intern
sure.
to share
Yeah,
different things. Yeah, it's not going to
I
be just one approach, just like any other problem. We're not going to have just
exactly.
one thing to fix it.
Exactly. So we need to challenge ourselves. And I believe very much, when something goes wrong, right, we're doing the exit interview, do the stay
Hmm.
interview instead, right? Speak to the person when
Yeah,
they're there. And then kind of a pre-mortem instead of a post-mortem, right? So let's think about everything that can go
could go
wrong with this
wrong.
person in this seat, right? And then say,
Yeah.
they don't have enough experience on this, so they're probably going to mess up here, they're going to mess up here.
Hmm.
Um, and how, so just think about it from the beginning, right? Where are
Hmm.
all the things that we think things can go wrong, and let's anticipate that.
Hmm. Yeah, I love those pre-mortems, kind of embracing pessimism. That's another tactic that we use when we're doing development, is thinking about just like every possible obstacle, every time we've tried something like this in the past, like what's gone wrong, and planning for those and having the systems in place to support that. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
fantastic. All right. And as we're just concluding here, if there's one thing that you think that leaders take too long to acknowledge or do that we could magically solve if we could change one thing about leadership, what would that be?
Yeah, I think ego is kind of the big, kind of enemy here as you grow into
Mm-hmm.
an organization and you think you have all the answers. I think great leaders are curious. They ask
Mm-hmm.
the people that are closer to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
They, take their time to understand the root cause of issues and not just, oh, based on my experience, this is what's happening, and quick to pass judgment. So I
Mm-hmm.
think taking a little bit more time to engage with people, right? With the people that are dealing with the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And, be humble to challenge your assumptions, because you don't have all the answers. If you do, you're never growing. So, it's a journey, right? As cheesy as this sounds, but you got to stay humble. You can learn something from somebody every day.
Mm-hmm.
So stay open-minded, stay humble. Don't let the ego or the authority get to your head.
Yeah, staying connected with people across the organization, your entire
Yeah,
team.
for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's a powerful takeaway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Isabel, thank you so much for all of your insights. I know
Sure.
I learned so much today about your perspectives and hospitality, unreasonable hospitality, how we can carry everything through here.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for
where
having me.
can we best keep track of you, and if anyone wanted to follow for a conversation?
So connecting on LinkedIn, super easy, right? I'm there often. EOS Worldwide is what we do, right? Which is implementing this simple, proven systems to help people achieve their vision, execute with traction, and have healthy teams. I think it's all important. You got to know where you're going. You have to know how to execute, and you have to have trust and a healthy team. So I'm a big fan of the work I'm doing there. I'm working with great clients, people that want it more than you, people that want to be better,
Yeah.
right? I think that's so important. So there's a lot of people to help out there,
Hmm.
and a lot of resources we know. But I'm here to help in any possible way, and just connect with people that are passionate about this topic, like you and I, Jennifer.
Yes, wonderful. Well, I can't think of a more beautiful way to conclude the conversation than hiring and bringing in people that want it as much as you do, or even more. And thank you so much for the conversation today. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we have our information included with this video to support you. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.